Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, and I'm so excited to bring this show to you. Show Me the Way is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. Today's guest on the Show Me the Way podcast was a good friend, Jessica Fleury. I have met Jessica virtually, so we had never met in person, and this was the first time we had a conversation where the two of us could see one another. But I did a call out on social media to see if anyone would pop in as a guest since I didn't have anyone scheduled, and she raised her hand. I was so grateful that the timing worked out for her and we were able to record the day after she let me know she was available. And she shared a very important perspective on handling and dealing with menopause and that time in a woman's life when they start a new chapter and they deal with a lot of health issues and many symptoms. Although every single person goes through it differently, she had really great points and great perspective about being an advocate for yourself, taking care of yourself, understanding that some things are not supposed to just be dealt with, and that you really should ask your doctor questions and try to find the right route and the right therapy to get through an uncomfortable or what could be an uncomfortable time of life. Jessica really stressed the importance of being open. She mentioned how she is going to talk to her daughters who are now adults, but far from menopause, but still may try to understand what their mom is going through or just to prepare them for the future. She even mentioned talking about these things with your spouse so that they can understand what is going on with you as this change takes place. So it is a very important topic. It is not one that I think we often speak of, but I know that many listeners are going to relate to Jessica and her positive attitude and her great perspective on dealing with this time of life. So I look forward to you as listeners learning from Jessica just like I did. And again, if you have a story to share, I believe everybody does. I would love to hear from you. You need to be on the show to share how you took a left instead of a right, or what a change in your life looked like and how it impacted you. And you can teach us all as listeners what you went through and what you learned from it. And I just think it's such a positive platform for us all. So I'm really grateful that Jessica was able to pop in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Show Me the Way podcast. This week, I'm excited to welcome my friend Jessica Fleury. I was in between a reflection episode and future guests, so I reminded everyone that they have a story to share on social media, and Jessica raised her hand. Jessica is another friend I've only met online and through a couple of phone conversations and voice memos, and I just said this is the first time we're talking and we can see one another while we're recording this. She is someone who I was blessed to meet, and I've enjoyed our virtual relationship. She sells my favorite nail strips, Color Street. So I met her through online sales, and I even joined her team for a short stint until I quickly realized I was better at just ordering from her and through her amazing customer service skills. Jessica's an educator, a businesswoman, a mom, and an all-around awesome person, and I'm looking forward to learning even more about her through her story or stories and with all of you as listeners. Thank you for being open, and welcome to the show, Jessica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So I always start saying a few things about how I know the guest or how I met the guest, but now I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to tell our listeners just a little bit more about you that I didn't mention.
Okay, well, I am Michigan born and bred, so lived here all my life, and I'm a school teacher. So I'm an elementary school teacher with close to 30 years behind me. So I've been in the education field for a long time. I have two daughters who are both out of high school, in college, one's in grad school. So they're heading into adulthood and very busy. I'm married. I am 53 years old, which will kind of come into play a little bit as I talk about my story. And I'm enjoying summer because I'm off. So that is probably why I, feel so refreshed. I feel able like that I can share my story and I could do a podcast. So that was part of when Andrea, when you put out that kind of all call, I was like, you know what, this is a great time for me. I've been through some things. It's summertime, which is a good time for me to reflect on the past year and time to maybe even share a little bit of my own perspective.
Well, that's great. Perfect timing. Sometimes you think to yourself, should I just throw something out there? And then when you do it, you're surprised. So I'm glad that I did that. People don't want to keep hearing from me and my perspective all the time. So it's nice to have guests and a surprise guest like this. So thank you so much. I call that, if you've listened to a few of my episodes, I often call the timing, or when things like that happen, God winks. So I think God was like, okay, it's time for you and Jessica to talk. So thanks for raising your hand. So, yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit more about yourself. Like I tell my listeners, so those that have been following, you know that I started this podcast because my younger son has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And when that happened, he was 5, he is 16, he's going to be 17, he's going to be a senior in high school, which is insane. And I keep saying that. Probably keep as listeners hearing me say that over and over. But yeah, so when we heard about that diagnosis, like our life just completely did a 180. We already had another son. So Jessica's a girl mom. I'm a boy mom. I've got my 2 boys. And the older one was walking, doing all kinds of crazy things before he was even 1 year old. And when my younger son was 1, 2, 3, 4, he wasn't hitting all the same milestones. And I just kept saying, don't compare, don't compare. But when he was 5, we found out there's a reason that he's not jumping around and climbing stairs the same way his brother is. He had this progressive muscle wasting disorder. And I'd never really heard of it. I mean, I heard of muscular dystrophy, but I didn't hear of Duchenne. I didn't know exactly what that all meant. Never really faced adversity like anything like that at all. My life, my childhood, everything was, pretty standard, pretty typical up until that point. And that just showed me that, life can change on a dime. Anything can change, anything can happen. And not that you're going to be completely prepared for everything that's ahead, but sometimes it's nice to have a different perspective and to say, you know what, life is short. I've got to take advantage of today. I got to take advantage of all the time with my loved ones. And I mean, he's just taught me that and so many other things. And you can tell if you haven't been listening, Jessica knows I like to talk. So podcast was a great idea for me. I like to listen to podcasts. And I thought, why not put a platform out there where I can share my son's story and then also allow others to share stories? And I was telling Jessica before we came on here, sometimes it's major challenge, major adversity, childhood diseases or illnesses, adults that go through illnesses, cancer treatments, grief. We've talked a lot about grief on the show. We've talked about people moving from one state to another, or changing jobs, thinking they were going to go into one career and then going into another. And it's just been really insightful learning from all of these different guests. Some are my friends, some are people I've known for a while, some are people I've just met. And it's just been a really, really great experience so far to hear people's stories. I believe every single person has a story. Sometimes it's just a pivot. Like I shouldn't say just a pivot that caused them to really step away from this plan that they thought they had for themselves. And I just think we can all learn from one another. You never know what people are going through unless you start asking the questions. And I just said, Jessica, whatever's on your heart, you can share whatever you would like with our listeners. And yeah, I'm going to be quiet now, except to probably pop in with some questions. But I'm going to let Jessica just share whatever she would like to share today. And I know we're all going to learn from her. So, Jessica, with that, you got the mic.
Okay, well, thank you, and it's so great that that you do have this platform because, like you said, it what I went through wasn't what maybe some people would say might be a major life change or something happening, but in some ways it was in my own way, um, and I hope that telling my story maybe kind of resonates with especially some of the women out there and the men that also need to hear this as well because it affects the other people in your life. So I guess I'll start with the fact that I am 53 years old, and years ago I remember my mother talking about menopause, and she was about my age when she went through it. So at that point, it was out of sight, out of mind for me. And I never really thought about it again until a few years back. And typically what happens is you end up going to your doctor, could be family doctor. For me, it was my OBGYN, who had been there when I was pregnant with both of my girls. And, I continued to see him just for the regular checkups. And then I was having some strange things happening, and things that were normal started not being so normal every month, so to speak. And he did some tests, and this was probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And he said to me, we can put you on hormones. And it wasn't even a thought to me. I was like, no, I'm fine. So then you kind of fast forward to about a year and a half ago, and I'm starting to have lots of symptoms, the hot flashes. And anyone that has ever had a hot flash before knows that it's like all of a sudden someone turned up the heat, like cranked it high. You're sweating, profusely, and and you could be in a cold room, and your body just heats up immediately. And so I started having the hot flashes. I was having these, kind of random night sweats where you wake up in the middle of the night and you're literally drenched with sweat. And then in addition to that, I was having some anxiety that just kind of came out of nowhere, just lots of like weird, like waking up in the middle of the night and worries about, I mean, things that were just silly, and lots of trouble sleeping. Oh my gosh. The thought of sleeping a solid amount of time in the night was something that I could only dream of. So having those kind of issues, but still feeling like, well, I'm not in menopause. I was still, in terms of monthly, I was still relatively normal in that area. So I never really thought of it that way. And so then I ended up going to my doctor, just my regular appointment happened to be coming up, and in some normal testing, my pap smear came back abnormal, which is scary. Anytime you go through any kinds of screening tests and they come back abnormal, you're, right away you kind of go to worst case scenario. And so having to go through some further testing, which did include some blood testing as well for my estrogen, the my doctor said, you're in menopause. Like my estrogen had bottomed out. So that was where I was having a wake up call that, okay, so I just went from not really thinking I was anywhere in that, I guess you could call it progression. And those of you that are around a certain age, probably hear the perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, that whole, spectrum that you go through. And I had gone from what I thought was maybe the start of perimenopause to I then went quickly into menopause. Like it was just happened so very quickly. So that was a lot. And as someone that hadn't considered hormone replacement, and I know it's not for everybody, I was very fortunate that I had a good friend who, during this time, when I was having all of these symptoms, which are very common, she just said to me, "Hey, I've got this book I want you to read." And so she recommended it to me. I read it as an audiobook because I like to listen to books in the car to and from work. And so she recommended this book by a doctor, Mary Haver, that was about menopause. And it really changed my perspective. I was still in the thought process because that was before a lot of the new research had come out. And so I was still kind of under that assumption that it could do more harm than good. And a lot of that, once I read the book, was from an old study back in, I had to look it up again, back in 1998. And it was, the study itself was flawed, and they reported inaccurately. And that's where all of it leads to breast cancer, can, lead to stroke, which they have since then said that wasn't really what was happening there, that the data was skewed. And so knowing that was the first step. And then reading about other women and what they had gone through with all of their symptoms, I started to really think about, okay, could this be a way for me? And so in having the conversation with my doctor, and I do have a male doctor, and he is wonderful, and he stayed current on the research. And I mean, he left it up to me. I decided I'm going to go ahead and go on the hormone replacement therapy. So for me, that's a patch, and you wear this little patch twice a week. You're switching it out, and then I also take a pill, a progesterone pill, at night, which also does help with sleep a little bit. But what I found, and I don't think it's necessarily typical for everybody, but as soon as I started that therapy, those two medications together, my symptoms went away. I mean, it was night and day. No more hot flashes. The night sweats were gone. The anxiety which I had been having was diminished greatly. The sleep, better, much better. Um, so for me, that just it became a game changer in so many ways. And then the more that I was reading and hearing on media about the benefits of it, um, then I mean, there was even more to be gained from this therapy in the long term. Things like osteoporosis, it helps with preventing some of that bone loss, which, because of my fair skin and my frame, my doctors are telling me I'm at a little bit heightened risk for osteoporosis. So they're saying it's helping to reduce that cardiovascular disease. The risk of that goes down as well. The risk of heart attack and stroke is diminished as well. Also, there's some studies indicating a reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, um, which is is important to me because I have a family member who has dementia. And so again, it's just when you look at that therapy, the for me personally, the benefits outweigh the risks. I mean, are there risks to any medication that you're going to take? But for me, just the short term and long term benefits are really what allowed me to feel comfortable starting the therapy and then also to continue it. So I'm about a year and a half in on on it. I don't find that I have any side effects from it. Um, I haven't I haven't had any issues with it. Sometimes the medication, the estrogen, can be hard to get. I go through my insurance has me go through a mail order, and they have been out. So I've had to call my doctor and have it filled through my local pharmacy. And I'm guessing it's because so many women are using the therapy, and I hope that's addressed, because that is a concern, because it is something that it's a maintenance drug, so you
Mhm.
don't go without. um, but yeah, so that's been really the not just the drugs themselves and the prescriptions, but really just being aware of what's happening to my body, and how I need to do things now to help myself later on down the road. So in terms of the medicine, that's great, and that's been super helpful, but there's a journey that you go on when you realize, okay, I'm this is one of those, I guess you could say, milestones, really, that you were like, well, you never really thought you'd get you would be there, and then you're here. It's like, okay, well, menopause was for my mom. And now here I am in that same situation. And it's really fine. I mean, I feel like that's part of the natural progression. It's part of where we are in life. And uh, I take care of myself a lot better than I did 5, 10 years ago. And part of it is probably, yeah, when you get to that a point where, menopause does signal that you're transitioning into the next part of your life, then it does make you, at least for myself, step back and think about, okay, how do I take care of myself better? And really thinking long term down the road, like what am I going to do to keep my bones strong? What am I going to do for for my heart? So just the working out has stepped up, changing the way that I eat, limiting the things that aren't so good for my body has been part of that as well. So there's a lot of facets to it, and just having to reevaluate where I am physically, mentally too, and you know, trying to take some of those stressors away, and which is hard. It's the tough thing about when you're going through menopause, any part of that, you know, pre, post, any of it, is that it often happens in a time of your life when you have so much going on. Yeah, my kids are growing up, but there's still a lot of things that I'm managing with that. They're it's different than when they were little. I'm still working. I'm not retired. I have aging parents who I have had to really take more of an active role in in their health and in their lives, and all of that, kind of happening at the same time, where it's like, okay, now you need to take care of yourself too, and trying to juggle all of that. So it can be a lot, but I think the first step for anybody, because I I know it's not for everybody, and whether you are having symptoms and you're just kind of wondering, what are my options? Because there are things out there that are not prescription based. And I did do that for a little bit, and it helped till it didn't. So everybody's a little different in that. Um, and I'm definitely not one to say take something if you don't need it. But for for me, the symptoms were interrupting my life. And that's always where I really make the distinction for myself, is how much of whatever is going on physically, mentally, how much is that disrupting your day to day? And some things you can manage, and some things you might, I always think, need a little help. And so for me, the hormone replacement therapy was the help that I needed, because it was affecting me. I mean, I was having, at one point, I mean, I could say I was having a dozen hot flashes in a day. And it could be, during work, it could be I was driving, and that's a stress in itself, not knowing at what point your body is just going to kind of go a little haywire. And that was kind of where I thought, you know what, I gotta figure something out.
For sure. I really like how you keep mentioning it works for me. It works for me. So you're really reminding all of us that everybody's unique.
Mhm.
Just because Jessica's sharing all this doesn't mean that you have to follow her exact journey. But what I also really like is that you're being so open and honest about it. I don't know why people, it's almost like there's so many women and we all talk about supporting one another, but then it's like, well, you're on a drug, like, then there's like this judgment, or there's this like, is that really what you should be doing? And it's like everybody has to choose what is best for them. And I also think there's such a lack of, I shouldn't say lack of, because if we did research, I'm going to talk about that book that you mentioned, there's resources out there, but sometimes maybe our doctor isn't completely up on, like you were saying, your doctor on the research, or maybe we don't have the right doctor for us addressing what we're going through, or maybe we're not doing enough research and getting enough information. So we're just sharing our opinions based on a little bit of information rather than fully listening to those that have been through it, or really going after your exact situation. So I appreciate, like I said, one, that you are saying this is what worked for you so that everybody knows it's a unique situation. And then two, that you are open. What is going to give me the best quality of life?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I know that for some people, they might have a doctor that doesn't believe in the therapy, or has somehow come about to, they feel like there are more minuses than pluses to it. And I have had someone say to me, "Oh, that's oh no, my doctor won't even talk about it." And it's unfortunate that there's not a conversation there, because that it and I just told that person when they said it, I said, "Well, there's a lot of information out there." I said, "You might wanna look, just check out some of the information that's out there." And I think we do have now, because it's become more, um, more okay to talk about, right? It was like you were talking, it's still, there's a long way to go, but at least I feel like we have some of these doctors out there who, they're going on social media and they're publishing books, and they're putting it out there, like, okay, here are the facts, and letting people make their own decision, because that's really what it comes down to, is what's going to help you along the way. And you're right, everybody's different in when it happens. And I have heard that you can typically possibly go through a very similar menopause cycle as your mother. So
Sure.
my mom telling me years ago, "Oh yeah, I went through menopause in my early 50s." Well, that made sense to me. And so there could be a connection between your mother and yourself. And even talking with my mom, she did go on hormone therapy for a couple of years. And that was during that time when, because it was, at first it was okay, and then this data came out and saying, "Oh, all these risks." And she was right in the middle of that time. And so she went on it briefly and then went off of it. So, but it's it's one of those conversations that I was glad that we had that conversation. And it's definitely one that I'm going to have with my daughters. I mean, they know I've been going through this, and they know that I'm on the therapy, but even as they get older, to let them know. And so when they start to have maybe some symptoms, and they're, you know, getting into that late 40s, which is where you start to hear a lot of people start to have some what we'll call issues or some symptoms, then it's good to at least understand that that's probably what's happening. And you can always go to your doctor and have your estrogen levels checked. So, I mean, that's a good thing too, is that you're able to, we can find out all this information so that you can tell where you are just based on those levels. So that was important. And even there's a lot of connection between what happens to women at this stage and other parts of your health. I have an autoimmune disease that I've had for 10 years, and it was well under control, but then all of a sudden it flared up right at this same time. And I, I can't help but wonder. um, and I'm pretty sure that there was probably something that had to do with that as well. So even thinking about how that can affect potentially other other medical issues that you might have, it all kind of works together. And so it's just good to be knowing, just understanding what's happening, and then if you feel like you need to manage it in some way, some women it's fine, but you just hear so many when someone has a hot flash and you're sitting there, then and everybody knows, it's one of those things. And I remember years ago sitting in a meeting, and our principal had a hot flash and she was taking off all these layers, and I couldn't really understand it. It just seemed weird, and you could tell she was like, her face was flushed. But then when you go through it yourself and you're like, man, what is happening? You're like, is it hot in here?
Like we were talking about before we got on here, our group of friends, if you have people around your age that you're around, I don't know about you, but I hear so many times from my girlfriends, oh, that must be perimenopause. That must be perimenopause. We end up blaming everything on that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Like if we have a forgetful moment, oh, it's because of our age. Oh, we're hot because of our age. Like some of it's a symptom, but then you also don't want to like blame everything in your life on it. So I feel like, and I might be the only one who feels this way, but I feel like it's a thin line. Like you don't want to blame every single thing that happens on that because you don't want to ignore something else. But also, it's like you were talking about, you didn't think anything was going on with your body for a short time. And then you're like, wait a minute, this is what's happening. So it's almost like a warning to myself. I don't want to miss the correct signs, but I also don't want to blame everything on perimenopause. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I I think just in general, doing all of the I would call them all the things. So when you think about just with your health, absolutely, talking to your doctor and or doctors like me. I have different doctors in my life, and so talking to them about, okay, this is going on, not necessarily having a menopause conversation, but saying, okay, this is what's happening. And could it be a symptom? Could it be attached to that? Or could it be something else for sure? And you're right. I think because there's so many things that could be attached to what happens to women when our estrogen starts to deplete and we go through menopause, but still having those conversations with your doctors and still doing testing or whatever it is that you need to do. I mean, I had a bone density test that I asked for. My doctor said, well, normally we do it at 60. And I said, well, you told me I'm at greater risk for osteoporosis. So, can I have it early? And he did. So I think whatever it is, if you've got something going on. I mean, the other one is the brain fog. And to decide, is that part of the menopause? And I think just learning about signs of things and being willing to look it up, or even going to your doctor to say, okay, what's normal? And then what do I need to take a closer look at? And so I think that's a part of it too, is not just having that one conversation with your one doctor who's whoever it is that you go to talk about, okay, my hormone replacement therapy, but really having conversations with your different doctors and your healthcare professionals is really important. I mean, I don't want to overdo it, but I do want to make sure that I'm taking care of myself and I'm doing my screenings and all of those things that could potentially kind of intertwine with going through menopause. But it is tough, right? Because you just and I know I listen to a lot of podcasts too, and I do try to find podcasts that have doctors that are speaking about topics that are related to what I might be concerned about. So, and that way I can at least maybe get a little bit more of a sense of, okay, do I need to follow up on this, or is this something that I'm like, okay, I understand this is normal. It's tough because I think for a lot of us, well, or those of us that are mothers, you've spent so many years taking care of everybody else. And then you get to a point, like I got to a point where I was the one having all the appointments. I was the one that had to have all these tests done. And you really have to go through, you have to kind of switch and be like, you know what? I have to start taking care of myself, or I won't be able to take care of those around me as well. And that's a hard thing.
Yeah, you said about you have aging parents, you have adult children who like we've talked about on the podcast and I've talked about with friends, like nobody tells you how difficult that whole transition is and how do you support and how do you give them space and all of that and you're still working full time. So, yeah, it's a lot and if you're unable to take care of yourself, how can you do all of those things?
Right.
That's important. And I also really, really like, I wrote down advocating because you're really stressing how important it is to advocate. And this time, switch gears, advocate for yourself, not just your children, but advocate for yourself and, asking for those tests, asking the questions, not being afraid to say, what I'm going through is important and my quality of life is very important. So I need to ask the questions and I need to seek the right doctor or doctors. I need to seek the right podcast, which I would love to hear if you have any on the top of your head, a podcast to share with our listeners. I bet that would be great. If not, we'll talk after and we'll put some in our notes.
Well, I do love Mel Robbins, and she does a great job of really having the premier people in the field talk on different topics. So I've listened into quite a few of her podcasts because, like I said, she has these experts, and she knows how to ask good questions, like questions that like the normal person who is just learning. She'll often ask questions that I would have for sure. Um, but when you're advocating for yourself, it is scary when you go through and you have tests. And like I said, I did have, before I went on the therapy, I did have a pap smear that came back strange. And so then I had to have a procedure. And but my doctor, he said, oh no, this is because your estrogen's so low. And I found out it was a common thing that could happen that just ended up giving that strange test result that I had never had a pap smear come back with a weird result. And so once it was determined that that was fine, it was due to my lack of estrogen, then that cleared up. And I have since had a fine one, no problems. But it's those kinds of things too that you don't want to not have the test done. I'm one that always I would rather know and deal with it than to just say, oh, well, I'm sure it's fine. So I encourage all of your listeners out there that are women to make sure stay up on your yearly, go to your doctor and have your mammogram, have your pap smear, because some things are related to that. And if you get a strange test result and you need to have further testing, get it done. So it's so important, and it's part of that. You got to take care of yourself. And even though you're probably busy, and I have to take off days of work to go and have those things done sometimes, but it really is it really is worth it in the long run, just to be able to just take care of yourself, like I said.
Right. Yeah. And our timing it's not always what we prefer. I mean, even when you were talking about, of course, I was going through all of this when I had a really busy time of my life, but probably there's never a perfect time of your life to go through things like this. It's similar, reminded me of like when young women are trying to get pregnant and they have these plans and they think this is when I want to have my child. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes the planners are able to make it work out, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's all about God's timing. And we talk a lot about that on the show. So, yeah, you never know when something's going to
Mhm.
happen. And it's how you deal with it at that time. So, among the busiest time of your life, how you still say, wait, time out. I'm really crazy busy, but I have to advocate and I have to take care of myself so that I can get through all of this.
Exactly. And that's part of, I think, what was tough is just that I had kind of so many things came together at the same time with some health issues with my parents. I was dealing with my own health issues. I had, well, at that time, I had a senior in high school, and then I had my other daughter in college. I had gone through a bit of a change at work. So it was like everything kind of came together at the same time. And that was probably the hardest part of it, was just that there were so many things that were taking up space in my life. But I think I felt like once I started really looking at how my health was, that made a big difference. But yeah, I mean, that was part of the biggest struggle, was that I had so many things that were kind of pulling at me and trying to, okay, can I get like this part of my life kind of figured out, cuz there's so many things out of your control. But I thought, okay, I can kind of take control of this, at least in a way that I can try to treat what's happening. And that made me feel like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. I had another question. Actually, I have two questions. So, and again, I'm asking you like you are a doctor, so I understand if you don't know this completely, but you do have the experience. I think, and again, you could look at books, you could do research, I could Google this, but I think there's some confusion as to what perimenopause is versus menopause. So, one time I don't know, I got really interested in this, I don't know, a year or two ago. I'm not sure why. I'm a couple of years younger than you. I don't think I'm completely there at the moment. And I did talk to my mom and I'm like, okay, when did you go through it? And her experience was very atypical. So I thought, I don't know that mine will look like that. I don't think she's ever sweat a day in her life. And I have hot flashes. I've had them since I was 20. So, I don't know that I'll follow her, but I have heard that before. You should ask your mom. Okay. So that didn't really give me too much direction, but for some reason I got a lot of interest and I wanted to learn more, probably like you said, to be more prepared and to arm yourself so when it does happen. I had I went to one session where this nurse practitioner shared a lot. And then I have a really great chiropractor friend who's a lot younger than me. Actually, she just had her first baby, so she's nowhere near, but she does care a lot about women's health as a chiropractor. So she did take some additional training and certification so that she could also provide training on perimenopause and menopause. And she said menopause is actually one day. It's the day where you haven't had your monthly visitor for 12 months. So it's
Mhm.
like the one day. Perimenopause is the leading up to it, I guess. I don't know if it's a year or for you it was a couple of years. So is that how you would describe it?
Yes. Yeah, that was new to me, that idea that menopause is just that one day, so to speak, and that to be in it, you have to go a whole year, is kind of the what my understanding is. Like, okay, once you've gone a whole year without your monthly, then you would consider like that day would be your menopause. And then from that point on, you're postmenopausal.
Post. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and that perimenopause, you're right, is all that time prior, and for some women, yeah, that can stretch, from what I understand, for quite a while. Like, I feel like I was probably in that for about 2 years, but I think it's different for every woman. And you can go depending on, I mean, your doctor is better at this, but I do know that you can be on hormone replacement therapy before you actually reach menopause. So when you're in that pre or perimenopausal time, you can, for sure, which is what that was part of my confusion though when my doctor brought it up, and I'm like, I'm not in menopause. Why would I need that? And at that point, I don't think I knew enough to even have a conversation with him. So that that was, looking back, I mean, I wish that I had gone on it a little sooner. I think it would have just saved me just going through some of the yucky symptoms, but I did it as soon as I had the information and knew that for me it was the right choice. But yeah, there's just so much, and that's why I encourage anybody that's curious, and no matter where you are in that, there are a lot of books on it actually. And the book that I read by Mary Haver, she's an MD, is called The New Menopause. So that's the book that I read, that she put out. But I know, I mean, you go to if you look it up, there are a lot of doctors out there who have written about that topic, and a lot of podcasts out there, and there's a lot of information, and luckily for us now, it is more prevalent in our social media, and there are some people that we hear from that know what they're talking about, doctors, and there still needs to be a lot of research, but I think it's getting better, and being able to have the conversation and have it with your friends, with your kids, with your spouses. Your spouse needs to understand what's happening as well, so that they can understand it too. So, but yeah, I am happy to see that so much has been in the media lately, and that there are doctors who we're starting to see them more frequently, and hopefully that will lead to more research, more funding, and just more overall support for women, no matter where they are in their life, really. This is just another piece of it.
Yes, for sure. Well, I for one, I mean, I have all kinds of notes. I'm kind of looking back at it. I for one have learned that, again, a great reminder to advocate for yourself, to ask the questions, to seek out the doctor that you feel most comfortable with. I also really like how you are telling us, be open, take away that stigma, speak with people, ask questions of your friends, just have these open conversations with your daughters or your spouse. I love that, and to seek out the resources, because you're making a good point. There's a lot we don't know, but there are a lot of resources that we could turn to. And so I'll definitely list this book title and look up some Mel Robbins podcasts and post them in our notes. But this is also a great podcast for future questions for people to learn more about it. So I really love how open you're being, and just reminding us that it's important to take care of yourself and to make sure you're understanding your health, especially, I mean, men too, but women, we're always trying to take care of other people, and we're probably going to keep doing that. So if we want to keep doing that, we have to make sure that we're in our best shape that we can be in as well. And I just really think that all of our listeners can learn from that perspective. You've shared so much. I mean, you are an educator by trade, but you can tell as you're talking that you're just comfortable sharing and making sure people are aware. So I felt like that coming through, and I really appreciated it. But I will say, before we end off, what are some other little nuggets that you'd want to share? I think you shared a lot with us. So you might say, I shared all my nuggets, but if there's one thing you'd want to leave, and I say nuggets, I've mentioned it a few times. We had a guest on the podcast. I think it was season 1, and she said that that was always her dad's advice. Leave nuggets with people. When you leave them, make sure you give them some nuggets of information.
Okay. Um, I guess I would leave people with, listen to your body, listen to that little voice inside you, and it's hard to find that voice sometimes because life is not always quiet, but listen to yourself, and if you have And no, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, and it could be something physical, it could be something mental, could be something spiritual. If something is like heavy on your heart or taking up space in your head, how can you address that? And is it you need to go and talk to somebody? Do you need to see a doctor? Do you, depending on what your faith is, do you need to go into wherever you find your spiritual uh, comfort from? I mean, what do you want to do to address that? Because I just keep coming back to you can't take care of others until you take care of yourself. And and we usually know if there's something a little off in our lives, and how can we address that? How can we meet that need or whatever it is that's tugging at us? So that's what I want to leave people with, because that's what I try to do as much as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's perfect. Again, I asked for a lot because you gave us nuggets throughout the whole conversation, but I really appreciate you kind of wrapping it up in that regard. And yeah, you do know what's going on with you. I tell people all the time, back again to mothers, I just feel like there really is something to be said about your intuition. You know it about your children. You know when something's off or something's not right with them. So you probably know it about yourself as well. So listen to that. Don't push it aside. A lot of us do that too. Men as well. We get busy, we get involved in things, and we say, our health, whatever we're going through is fine. We're fine. That's not important. But you don't know if you don't know. And you're right. You cannot really take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. So I think that's wonderful advice. And I just really appreciate that. Before we popped on here, I told Jessica I don't really have an episode dedicated to what so much of us go through. And I know we've got all kinds of different listeners, but I have to assume many of the listeners are women around our age, so they will definitely benefit from learning about this. But even if you're not a woman around our age listening to this episode, you can still take a lot of that perspective because, again, you have to take care of yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. Life is short, but during that short time, you don't want to live it uncomfortable. So if there's something that you need to do to address what you're going through, I respect whatever it is. If it's doing things naturally or homeopathic way because that's what you believe in and that works for you, great. If you try it and you're like, this isn't happening, I need a prescription drug to get through this, then you need to do that. And there's really no harm in going after what is best for you. I keep talking about women being pregnant, probably because my niece is getting ready to have a baby. So I think about her often. And some of the things, obviously, it's a whole different time of life when you're actually having babies and when you're no longer able to have babies. But it does just make me think like when you're pregnant and people say, oh, this is what you can expect. And this is how the labor is going to go. And then they say, oh, I don't know about breastfeeding. Okay, this is what you have to do. I mean, you don't know what's going to work for you. So I did tell her if the breastfeeding works, if you're making milk and the baby's latching and it's comfortable for you both, great. If it's not, it's okay. It's fine. There's great technology with bottles now. They feel to the baby like they're having a natural feeding, and there's a lot of great nutrients in the formula that you're giving your baby too. Like many of us have I grew up on formula and I'm just fine. So, we just, especially women, I think we put stigma on stuff like you have to do it this way and you don't. So, Jessica even mentioned she tried some things that were okay and improved her symptoms a bit, but didn't really give her that quality of life that she was looking for. And so she did need to choose what was best for her by going on to the hormone replacement therapy. So I think that was great advice and great perspective just to say it's okay. You have to do what's best for you. I've learned that with my son too. There's a lot of people that have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, unfortunately. It mainly impacts boys. There's boys that are exactly the same age as him that have the exact same type of issue, and they still deal with it all differently. It's amazing. Every single person is unique, and that's an important thing to remember too. You shouldn't think to yourself, that person went through all of this, so it's going to look like that for me. Probably not. It's going to look like it will for you. Every person is going to go through it differently. So yeah, and you're shaking your head, so I know you agree.
Yes.
So, well, I know I talked a lot at the end, but you just put a lot of great thoughts in my head. So I appreciate and you said that right before we got on. You said I just have some great perspective that I really want to share. And I think you're spot on. And it really does go into what I posted on social media that everybody has a story to share. And we can all learn from one another, and you don't really know what somebody's going through. You might see somebody in a meeting start taking off their layers or hold a fan in their face, and you might be like, what the heck is wrong with that person? But then if you take a minute and you think, okay, they're going through something, and that could be something I go through in the future, then you can have a little bit different perspective and understanding. And I think that's what we need to do. Just talk to one another, understand that people are usually going through something and we don't really know about it unless we start asking or talking to them. People are great at hiding it. People are great at putting social media posts out there that make it look like life is perfect. It's not for anybody. And we can all just learn as long as we are open to one another.
Very true, and I appreciate that your podcast is allowing people, like me and, all of your other guests to be able to just share their stories, because there is so much, that we can learn from each other. And you're right that everybody's going through something, and it might not be big, it might be little, but for everybody, it's something. And and it's going to impact the way that they interact. And I think it's important that we know what others are going through, or at least know what others might be going through, because like you said, yeah, you might be going through it yourself one day. And to be able to have empathy for each other, and to be able to give each other a little bit more grace. And sometimes that just comes from understanding that there's another perspective out there and what someone else is going through. So I appreciate your podcast and being able to share a little bit of my journey, and maybe it will help someone else out along the way, or at least give them something to think about. So thanks.
For sure. And I really like those two words you just said, grace and empathy. Those are really good words. Those are going to be our words for today. So thank you for sharing that. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And again, for being so open. I said, is anyone available to record? And Jessica said, we could do it tomorrow. And so I just think that was perfect timing. And I'm glad that I put it out there. Sometimes it's good to just be a little open to that. And Jessica raised her hand, and I thank you so much for doing that and sharing your story and teaching all of us. I look forward to the listeners learning from everything that you shared. So thank you so much for being on. And you were a wonderful guest for this show.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Sure. Thank you for joining me for the Show Me the Way podcast. I truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. I hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If this episode touched your heart, don't forget to leave a quick review, as it will help us reach and motivate more people. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.